so what you see on your screen right now are images that are just coming in from outside the Pak embassy in Kabul. And these are huge protests right now underway. A lot of women folk is essentially what you see on your screens. All of them right now protesting against the role of Pakistan with the Taliban against the resistance forces. Again and again, remember, you have seen people coming out in good numbers to protest, but they have also been thwarted there earlier by the Taliban. Let's just listen in to these protests for a bit.
Protesters are going towards Chora now. This is Chora Ansari roundabout.
Let's quickly once more recap what you're looking at on your screens right now. These are local Afghan nationals who are all protesting outside the Pak embassy, all this happening in Kabul. And just look at the numbers. They are coming out in huge numbers this time around to ensure that their voice is heard. On the other side, in fact, on the right of your screen are also moments where the Taliban actually opened fire on these civilians to be able to ensure that there are no protests. Now, Afghan citizens have been staging this protest against Pakistan. All this is coming at a point where the ISI chief from Pakistan is still in Kabul. In fact, he has been in touch with the Taliban top leadership. Again, a story that Republic got to you more details of. Reports have also earlier indicated that the Taliban has opened fire at the protesters. That's the video, remember, playing out on the extreme right of your screens. Anything against Pakistan was not being tolerated by the Taliban. You will also see a lot of these people later running around as the gunfire could be heard in these protests. And a good number of women this time are coming out in protests, as you have seen earlier, also in different provinces, including the Herat province, where you have seen a lot of these protesters earlier. And in fact, this video too, also, the one that is playing out in the center of your screens, is giving you a bird's eye view of the number of these protesters. And again, as I said, look very, very closely. All of them right now are women. Women coming out in huge number, not fearing what the Taliban would really do. Because remember, they believe that this is their chance to be heard and they need to come out to protest. Just about yesterday, Ahmad Massoud had also put out that entire audio message where he said that the people of Afghanistan have to come out and support us. He said all of you together have to be a part of this resistance movement. And we have seen these very, very dramatic images coming in right now. These are protests outside the Pak embassy. So Azadi, Azadi is what you hear all these women right now saying. And in the middle of that entire video, as I say, good evening also to Dr. Raghav Sharma, who's an associate professor and director at the Center of Afghanistan Studies. We heard, a lot of those gunshots that probably were fired to ensure that these protesters disperse, Raghav, but that did not happen because, all of us know that at a time like this, where this is Taliban versus anything else, these are people who have decided to choose hope and they've decided to choose life. The reason why they're out in streets in such huge numbers, Raghav.
Well, I think what this attests to is the fact that Afghanistan, and something I've been talking about for a long time, this is not the Afghanistan of the 1990s. So the Taliban are confronted with an Afghanistan which is dramatically reconfigured, dramatically different from what it was in the 1980s. It's a country that is exposed and connected to the world in a far more profound way and in a far deeper manner than it had been in the 1990s. And the Taliban is going to find it extremely difficult, exceedingly difficult, to come to terms with this changed Afghanistan. And clearly, the Pakistanis made for very bad optics when Faiz Hamid's pictures were beamed at the Serena Hotel, where he was obviously there to, shape government formation and B, most likely direct operations in Panjshir. And Serena couldn't have been a more ironical venue for him because it's the same hotel that the Haqqani network, which was patronized by Rawalpindi, had staged attacks on. So the irony really couldn't be deeper. And these protests really mirror what is taking place across the country, because it's not just Kabul. Even places like remote places like Hor, like Daikundi, there was a huge protest in Daikundi, which was pretty spontaneous. Last night there were peaceful protests in Kabul in places like Sharak-e-Arya, which is close to the airport in Kabul, with large number of women participating. And I think this gives you a sense of, it attests to the fact that a majority of the Afghans are not okay with Taliban rule. So it shatters the idea that Taliban is a force that represents Afghans. And we're seeing these protests across the country, across ethnic divides, across provincial divides, regional divides. So it tells us that, Afghans have aspirations like all of us do. And the Taliban is clearly finding it very difficult to deal with it. I mean, what did the Taliban do? How did they respond to it? They fired at the protesters. In fact, a bunch of women, there's been videos on social media. Women have been locked up in the parking of Azizi Bank, which is in Shareno, in the new city in Kabul. So clearly, the leadership is saying something else, and the boys on the ground are doing something else. So the words of the Taliban do not match the actions, and that's not surprising at all.
That isn't absolutely not surprising, Raghav. Thank you so much. And, a lot of them are speaking against Pakistan. They do not want Pakistan as, any kind of stakeholder in deciding their future. I think that is the bottom line, and the world must take note of what's happening right now. Republic, as always, is tracking that story, and much more. Time for us to head into a quick break.